Oh, that's cool.
There you go. How's it going today, guys? You are with StickTalk Podcast. I'm your host, DR Hitting, and I'm with Ian. Oh my God, are you kidding me? You fucking dog! Oh my God.
No way.
Are you with me? Are you with me? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Can you? Oh my. Well, that's a great start. All right, so
We're staying hot. We're staying hot.
let's
That's so funny.
How's it going today, guys? You're with StickTalk Podcast. I'm your host, Drew, and I'm with Ian Jenkins here as well. We got a super especially cool guest here today. We got Ryan Kreidler with the Detroit Tigers. How are we doing today? Ryan?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
And this podcast is brought to you by none other than Mind Baseball. Mine has the hardest wood on the market by 9%.
We do like the hardwood, so we'll be able to go off of that right there. So,
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us again, Ryan. First, before we get rocking and rolling, I guess, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, from Davis, California, which is Northern California up by Sacramento. Grew up there, went to Davis High School, and went to UCLA after that. Played summer ball, played basketball growing up as well. Played a bunch of sports growing up as a kid, and then went off to just play baseball at UCLA. Played there for 3 years. Drafted in 19. We had a couple great teams in college. Could never get it done. I was just watching the game last night.
Yeah.
Never got to Omaha, unfortunately, but we got drafted in 19 by Detroit. I've been with them ever since. Made my debut in last year, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So played a month at the end of the season last year, and then so that's been my journey so far.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you played several different sports growing up. At what age did you focus on baseball? Especially
college.
College.
Yeah,
really?
college.
So you were a multi-sport athlete all throughout high school.
Yeah, I played basketball all the way through. That was the thing that I was thinking about when I was in high school, just specializing in playing only baseball. And I do think that I probably missed a little bit of development when I was in high school, baseball-wise, but I wouldn't trade it because I think what I lacked in skill development in baseball, I probably gained in athleticism. So I think it was a good thing. I think it was, and more importantly, it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and I got to play with my friends. So I stopped playing senior year, so I finished all 4 years of basketball, and then just went baseball only after that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So you feel like it made you a better overall athlete?
Definitely. I think more so on defense,
yeah, for sure.
Being able to move your feet and communicate and all that kind of good stuff. So for me, I always enjoyed it. And it's something in the off seasons that I kind of like to just mess around with, play some basketball, play pickleball or whatever. Like to play golf now. But yeah, just play another sport.
That's great. Was baseball always your favorite sport, or did you have kind of other sports that took the favorite?
I like baseball better, to be honest with you, but I wasn't as good at it. I was better at baseball naturally, but I enjoyed basketball more, especially in high school, because it's like so fun. There's people that actually go to the game. At least from my high school, we didn't really get a lot of people at the games in baseball, but in basketball we did. So I enjoyed doing that. All my friends played basketball, so I played basketball. In my free time, I'd go shoot hoops. But I realized that I like to practice baseball more. And then that obviously helps when you make it your job, right? Because you want to be able to practice it, enjoy it, and spend time on something you actually like. But, that was it.
Absolutely. So you brought up the fact that you golfed. And I always thought this was interesting because many, many years ago, it was said that baseball players should not golf at all. And personally, I noticed that when my swing was really bad on the field, I couldn't hit a golf ball. I actually couldn't hit it at all. And when I did, I don't know where it would go. But as my direction started to get better, I could hit a golf ball better. So have you noticed any correlation between golf and your swing?
I think a lot of guys would say yes. I don't really notice much of either way. Like if I play a lot of golf, I don't think my baseball swing suffers. But if I don't notice it, affecting my golf game if my baseball swing is either good or bad. I really don't notice it one way or the other. I think for me, like I kind of have two different swings. I wish I could just hey, my baseball swing sucks. I need to go to the range. I wish it was that easy. And I know a lot of guys that say that.
That's crazy.
Quite a few hitters, they'll say, hey, I need to just go golf. Or not swing. But for me, I've always wanted to swing, which maybe gets you in a black hole every now and again. But I mean, they're two different swings for me.
And when you're growing up, so obviously you played all sports. So you played basketball and baseball. Did you play football too, or what was the third sport?
No football. I played. I used to swim when I was a kid. I played
Okay.
soccer when I was really young. I didn't do either of those competitively. Mostly just basketball and baseball competitively. I tried like running. I tried track. I tried cross country. My parents were big on just being well rounded and trying a bunch of different things. So I ended up trying like probably 5 or 6 different sports, but only baseball and basketball consistently.
So did you ever feel like you understood at some point where you were like, hey, this is for me? Or because you were in basketball and baseball, you were just like, hey, I'm really good athlete. When did it start becoming more apparent to you that like, hey, this baseball thing, I think I have a future with?
I think when I was probably in like middle school, I got recruited really early for a couple of reasons. One was I went to a public high school that was Division I in California, which is a pretty good area for if you want to get recruited. You can just play your high school, and there are going to be a fair amount of people there, depending on like who you're playing or whatever. But my high school team had a UCLA recruit on it. His name was Matt Trask, and when he was on my team, obviously people came to watch him, whether it be pro scouts or college coaches when he was going through that process. And so he was 2 years older than me, or 1 year. I can't remember. He was older than me by at least 1 year. So I got the benefit of people coming to see me. So I was a tall, skinny kid who was playing shortstop, and I could hit a little bit, but just like really raw, kind of gangly, raw kid. And I got the benefit of getting recruited when I was like a freshman. Really, when I was in like 8th grade, I think, which was kind of crazy. But and I didn't make a decision until I was a junior in high school because I just didn't trust it. Like you can never. Yeah. I feel like that's a huge decision, but I got recruited really early, and I kind of sat back and realized like this baseball is probably. In the back of my mind, I probably figured that baseball was what I was better at, but it didn't really hit me in the face until then.
Yeah. So in high school, you said you were really raw, and you benefited from the athleticism you got from the other sports. At what age did you really start to hone in on your swing mechanics and really start to dive into that?
Not until I got to college, really, and really like I didn't personally take initiative on my own swing until I was probably a junior in college. Like I didn't really. I always relied on coaching. I relied on coaching in high school. I didn't rely on anyone. I was like so self-driven that I didn't know anything about the swing. And so I'd go to the field and whatever felt good. And honestly, there are times now that I wish I could do that.
That's not a bad spot to be, man.
I wish I could unlearn some things. Some bad habits or some movement patterns or whatever, injuries that, happen and you don't swing the same. But when I was in high school, I would just go hit by myself or with my dad or just with my team. And it was all like situation driven, right? Like I was trying to move a runner or I was executing the rounds in BP, trying to stay on the barrel. And really, I think that took me quite a long ways, probably until college. In college, I got exposed a bit. I was like, I was swinging my old swing, didn't really love it, and wasn't having success, so we spread out. And that was kind of what I went to, and I've even gone to it now. My default was kind of like a spread out, foot up, toe down, or heel up, heel down. Yeah, keep it as simple as I could. I was really, really handsy, too, as a kid, or as a young player, like when I was in college, really handsy. Kind of just throwing my hands at the ball. That's kind of the curse of the middle infield I've heard. It's being really handsy and not necessarily always using your body the best way. So that was what took me through my freshman year in college, just relying on hand-eye, and really sophomore year as well. I tried like at the time, some of the Dodgers were getting really hot with just like no back shift and all forward move. So kind of tried a tall kind of fall, and ended up for me being like a fall forward with a scissor kick. So I tried that when I was a sophomore, got exposed a little bit because I didn't understand why I was doing that. I tried it and I trusted people. And I really do think that my coaches have my back and have my best interest at heart, which is great. Yes. And I know that not everybody has the benefit of that. So I feel lucky to have had good coaches in college. And then when I was a junior, I went to Cape Cod in between those two. So I went to the Cape after my sophomore season. And that was when I kind of just took it upon myself to dive in and start watching a little bit more video of good players better than me, players on my team.
Right.
In college, we had a few players that had really good swings.
Yeah, I'm interested in that because I've done that sometimes too. Is look at like some guys who are doing better than I am. I'm like, okay, what's making them tick? Who are some of the players that you looked at in college? That were your teammates?
I was. That's a good question. I've never been. I haven't since high school. I haven't been the best player on my team ever.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah, I really have never been for one pitch the best player on any of my teams. Maybe here and there, but consistently over a season, no. And that I think has made me a lot better. In college, when I got there, we had some big bats. We had Sean Bouchard, who is now with the Rockies. He's hurt this year, but he's a great hitter. He hits a lot of doubles, high average, a lot of doubles. He was a really, really talented hitter in college. And then when I was a sophomore, my class was great. I was the fourth player picked in my class. I was picked in the fourth round. So Michael Toles with the Rockies. Chase with the Cubs. Ryan Garcia is a right-handed pitcher with the Rangers. Those are all guys picked ahead of me. Then me, and then we had Garrett Mitchell and Matt McClain also. And both those guys made
big leaguers.
Yeah, Matt's having a special season, and there are quite a few more arms that were big leaguers. So I think on one time we probably had at least 5 or 6 big leaguers on one team. Yeah, it was crazy. So, like I said, when I went to Cape Cod, I was sitting back and we had like Bryson Stott, Andrew Vaughn, Bryant Packard was a guy. I don't know if you know that name, but he was a real dude in college. Dude, yes, he was a guy, and he still is a guy. He's great, and more importantly, he could explain to me. We were roommates, and he could explain to me like why things happen, what his feels were in different languages, which I think you guys can relate to that. Like not only in Bryant Packard language, can he tell me things, but in Ryan Kreidler language or in Andrew Vaughn language. Hey, Andrew thinks kick up. He was swinging like Donaldson at the time.
He was. Oh, he was. Yeah. Was that his Golden Spikes year?
Sophomore, yeah. So I think it was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he was real, and he was like, he made a big swing change because he was a pitcher when we were growing up. He's from Northern California as well. Yeah, he was two-way, but he was a pitcher. And people didn't really know he could hit. And he came to college and they started kicking him and he started catching balls out front. That was what he told me. He's like, all I think about is catching the ball out front. And it's so interesting because he could wake up and hit. Yeah.
Yeah, totally dude. So my last year at Carolina, I think it was 18. I forget what year it was that I saw this. But the most impressive thing I saw all year, because I below leaderboards because I was up there, and I saw Andrew Vaughn hit a home run on a 3-0 slider at 116. This guy's on a different level. Who's hitting a 3-0 slider out? Like who is making the decision? Like, I want that pitch. Wham! It's crazy, and it wasn't even a good pitch to hit. I think it might have been on the black. So impressive.
So impressive. Confidence. Yes. Yeah, that whole team, like Cal had this swagger about them at the plate. Like they were one of the first teams that I encountered that really it seemed like they didn't care about striking out, and I don't think they really struck out that much. But they had the approach of like, I'm going to get my hack off.
Yeah,
I'm going to get my hack off early, and if I miss, I miss. More often than not, I'm not going to miss. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he was obviously the guy that put them on the map. And then they also had Corey Lee, who was a first rounder that year.
Yep.
For him, I remember him.
Yeah. He was hitting the ball really hard as well. So
yeah.
But yeah, and then when I was in Cape Cod, I just I kind of, like I said, took it upon myself to ask people questions and realized that, hey, like I don't really have this thing figured out. So what's the worst that can happen? Like, at worst, I go back to college and I'm doing the same thing I just did.
Yeah.
Hitting 220 with some defense. And at best, I figured some things out. And I really did. I went back. I didn't really hit that great in the Cape, but I learned a lot. And I took some of those things with me back home. And then when I got back home, I got in the Cape.
You could work on some things,
by myself and just watched a lot of video. I was watching like Bryce Harper. I was watching Castellanos. I was watching Miggy. I was watching JD Martinez. Machado that year. So a lot of great hitters still, but the guys that were really, really in their primes that I was watching. And then when I was a junior, I started to implement some stuff in game, and it really helped.
Nice. So
That's
something
huge.
you said that was good, Drew.
You're good.
Something you said that was really interesting was, and you made it to the big leagues, is you said you were never, and I absolutely love that because you always put yourself. It seemed to be that you put yourself in environments where you weren't the top dog, and I feel like that's super important because you're the average of the 5 people you hang around, right? So you're not the best guy on your team, but you're hanging around dogs, right? And you guys are pushing each other to get better. I feel like a lot of people, if they're the big dog, really comfortable with success and not handle it well, and start to get lazy because there's nobody to push them. How do you feel like never being the best player on your team has contributed to your career?
Yeah, I think it's helped a lot. And I don't think that, like, I say that in retrospect, right? Because in the games, I think I'm the best player. Like, I think when I'm on defense, I think I'm the best defender. And when I'm at the plate, I think I can do damage. But it's not, I think looking back and saying, wow, like, you know, there are things on the field that some of my teammates have been able to do that I haven't been able to do. And that's a great thing because my skill set and their skill sets obviously can complement one another, and then we can make something great happen as a team. But like you said, yeah, you absorb so much from people if you're willing to hear it, I think, is a big part of it.
It's huge.
And I think a big part of my learning curve, as I've developed from high school to college to professional ball, is learning when to listen and when not to listen. I think, as you guys know, like, there are a lot of times when somebody's talking hitting and it's either way over your head complicated or oversimplified or not your language, and you need to just nod your head and let it go in one ear, you know? So I think for me, and that's always a battle with everyone, even you know, me or some of the best hitters in the world. There's a hitting coach here, or not here, but just in general, like, there are going to be people in your DMs, you know, on Instagram, on Twitter, telling you how to hit, and it's like, if you let some of that, you know, that can be a problem. So I'm learning how to filter constantly, not a finished product, and having great players on your team helps, but it can also hurt. So you got to, I think, an important piece for me has been watching great players and being like, wow, that guy has a great process. How do I have a great process also? It doesn't have to be the same process, but how can I just make mine as good or better than theirs? You know?
And I think that's great. And I think that's great, Ryan, because what you're touching up on there is showing that even these elite level athletes, and you're talking about, you know, guys that you're surrounding yourself with who are, you know, getting picked in the top 5 rounds with yourself. And you're showing that how you're learning is going to be different than someone else. Like, you learn differently than Bryce or whoever it may be. And I think that's a great piece to put into. It doesn't matter like how good you are. The same piece of advice might hit you a different way than it hits someone else. So I think that's excellent, man.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, like you said, you said it, and you guys are both in the coaching field now, and like, you guys understand when you're talking to kids, high school players, professionals, everybody's going to interpret what you say or how you say it in such a different way, based on what they would want to hear, what they need to hear, how you've told them things in the past. Like, I really think that's such a huge part of it. And so, like, if I'm talking hitting to someone, especially younger players, I need to preface something by saying, hey, listen, you know, I don't know everything, and your feelings might be completely different than what I'm about to say. And if that's the case, tune me out. Because there are great players who don't make good coaches.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I actually tend to believe that the best players are probably kind of the worst coaches, because it's come so easily for them that they never had to they never had to learn why or how to do it. And I noticed some of the best coaches are some of the most domed up players in their career, because they were going a million things going through their head, and they were trying to figure it out so they can relate to the player. Something that I like that you said a lot was speaking your language as a hitter. Like, maybe this guy doesn't speak your language. I think specific because just like we said, hitters interpret things differently. You have to speak the language of the hitter in order to get them to understand. Which is the only way you can do that is if you shut up more and listen. Shut up more and listen more. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
right.
And the player is going to teach you how they need to be talked to, and they're going to teach you like what they need. You just have to shut up and listen. And now the age of information, everybody knows everything. So as soon as like you hop on the phone, or as soon as you do a lesson, it's this, and it's useless because you don't know how to communicate to the kid, and you're screwing up that kid in more ways than you even know. So I love the fact that you talked about speaking the same language as a player. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, or just not even, like you said, not even speaking that much. Like, I think for me, how I've really learned in my career has been either hands-on coaching, like with somebody showing me how to do it, or watching somebody else do it well. I don't really respond well to like, and this is just my learning style, I don't really respond well to like a lecture or to a bunch of words, or to like really diagnostically like getting in the weeds about something. I'd rather you just show me and either say yes or no, or I can feel it or I can't, or it matches or it doesn't. So I think over time, like I've learned that about myself. If I watch a lot of video about myself and I really get in the weeds, I'm gonna find something, and it's gonna build me up. But if I'm watching video and I say, yeah, that looks right, or like, yeah, it's moving good, and that's it, then that's something I can build off, and it's like a stepping stone.
Yep. I think a lot of coaches make a mistake of telling instead of teaching. And what I mean by that is, you know, like Jenk says, a lot of the time, and everyone get caught up in it. It's you want to be able to tell information, but it's like if this athlete is not retaining or even picking up, like you were saying, Ryan, you're not a lecture guy. Like you're not going to pick up from words. You need to be hands-on. Like this is what we're doing. And you know, if you can get that done in 7 words and a little bit of one little cue, simple works, baby. So make it simple, make it easy. I think that's huge. And here we are, you know, we're talking with a big leaguer, and it's funny because with everyone we talk to, it's a lot of the same, like simple instead of extensive and crazy. So that's awesome to hear from you, man.
Yeah, I will say though that like sometimes it's not, and you guys know this, when you're trying to teach something, it's not always a simple concept. And so it might take a second for it to become simple. Like it might be complicated and feel weird at first, and there's that growing pain. I'll give you an example. We were talking about swings. I made a swing change between 2019 after my college season and my first short season in pro ball. And that next ended up being COVID. So I got a full year to work on my swing. I went to Doug Latta. He's been my hitting coach ever since that time. And so we transitioned from like kind of a sit spin thing, which was like my instinct, to a much more forward move based approach. And it took me a long time to figure it out. Like I really don't know that had we not had the COVID season in 20, like would I have figured it out for 21 or for that 20 season? I don't know. I'm glad I didn't have to, because it was a huge learning curve. But I really think that like failing and going for something teaches you not only about the thing you're trying to achieve, but like what hasn't worked for you in the past. Like what are the things that are breaking down? Why are they breaking down when I'm trying to fix them? And how can I have that in my mental little Rolodex for the future? So I think a lot of hitters speak that way too. Like I've spoken to a lot of my teammates about, hey, what are your feels? And they're like, well, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's this. I kind of have a couple feels that I cycle through because I don't know. And it's not, like you said, it's not always that simple up front, but they've had the experience and they've had the time. And now for them, it's like, oh, let me just try this. And that might be the simple fix.
Absolutely. Something you said there that I liked a lot was you used to sit back and spin, and then you had to learn the forward move. And that was something that was very, very hard for you to grasp. Can you kind of talk about like that process? Because that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And I think it's just because of the times with baseball. You know, 30, 40 years ago, guys were moving forward heavy on their front leg, a lot of scissors. Roberto Clemente lunged at the ball, right? So the thing back then was stay back, stay back, stay back. Now I think the dynamic is kind of switched to where like guys are getting stuck back, right, and not moving forward. And I think a lot of kids are struggling with that. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, the things that helped you learn the forward move?
Yeah, and like I said, I haven't mastered it. I think there's always nuance to it. Like we were talking before we went on the recording about how it's something that I'm constantly in a battle with. You know, some days it feels like I'm moving forward too much. Some days it feels like I'm not moving forward at all. When I'm right, I don't really know. You know, like there's always that moment of like, it just feels good, so don't mess with it. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in college. In college, I was making good swings at the ball, I thought. And by the way, I come from a West Coast school. We were getting pitched soft away. So it was sinker slider away, or sinkers away, some four seams away, not really up, not really in. If they went up or in, it was kind of a mistake most of the time.
Yeah.
And then spin away. And they were getting, this far off away. And so I had to cover that. And my approach to that was just like catch ball super deep and spray to the right. And then if they hang you an off speed, you can pull that. And my approach was just spin on it, basically. Yeah. And I got in a pro ball, and that wasn't – it's not like these guys have, like, overwhelming command, but they were at least able to throw, like, a firmer four-seam fastball up or a fastball in. And that was the next level. So I was like, okay, what's something that can take that away or can help me combat that, make me feel a little bit more athletic in the box? And that's really all I was after. I didn't really know much about Doug, to be honest with you. Like, I knew he had worked with JT. I knew he had worked. Sorry?
Yeah. I was saying JT. I remember that. I remember them working together.
Yeah, he worked with JT. He's worked with a few guys you probably like behind the scenes that most people don't
Carlson.
know. Yeah, Carlson's his nephew, believe it or not. But yeah, that's his
I
nephew.
had no clue. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep. And well, actually, as a matter of fact, I knew that Dylan had hit with him. Me and Dylan are from the same area. Dylan's from Elk Grove, and he made a big jump from his junior season to his senior season of high school. And I was like, what is he doing? He's a switch hitter, like me, though. Like, skinny, tall, a little uncoordinated at the time. But then he turned it around. I'm like, man, his swing looks so much better. He's getting the ball in the air, backspinning balls to the pull side. Yeah, and he still does that really well. He can really backspin a ball and a fastball. And I'm like, man, like, there's something to that. So I went to Doug with a Cape Cod teammate of mine, and we spent a couple of days. It wasn't for – his name was Oliver, the guy that I went with. It wasn't for Oliver, but I think – since I was living in LA, I was finishing school. I was like, man, I'm just going to keep going to Doug and just see what happens. Because he immediately, one thing you learn about that guy is like, as soon as you walk in the door, he's going to tell you how it is. Like, whatever he thinks, he's going to tell you. So he was like, man, I think your swing is not very good, and I'm going to show you how I think your swing is. But your swing sucks, basically. Like, you're sitting and spinning, and he'll do this thing. Well, he'll get on the computer, and he'll be clicking frames, like one frame at a time forward, like click, 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 click. And he'd be like, you're wasting all these frames. And really what he was telling me was like,
I like that.
Yeah, you're sitting and you're not doing anything. You're giving the pitcher such an advantage by you're not gaining ground and you're losing ground. And so you're giving the pitcher so much time. You're giving time away. And that's what opened my eyes to it, because I'm like, that's exactly what it feels like. I think when I started to make a forward move, and with him, it's a little dramatic, right? So you kind of like Justin Turner a little bit.
Yeah.
Until you find your own. He's like, let's set the foundation, and then you find your own niche, right? You find your own.
But doing it that extreme way helps you figure out like you gotta know how you need to move. Yeah,
it's the same thing with teacher man. Like he's gonna tell a guy, hey, stand on your back leg and swing from your back leg, and eventually you're gonna figure out, okay, like I'm not gonna stand on one leg and hit the ball.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna figure out this is the feeling, or like this is how my own stuff can fit for this, right? So that's how I approached it with Doug. And like I didn't know where I was gonna go. I was just open to it. And then over the course of that off season, we worked, and I felt really able to, for the first time, able to pull the ball. I could never pull the ball on purpose. I would always pull the ball on instinct. And with Doug, it just felt like I could really pull the ball, and now I had opened up the field. Because I wasn't just like right field line to center field and then everything else was topspin. I was now backspin there and backspin there most of the time. Because, and I've come to realize this though, I was making a forward move. I was thinking forward. But like you said, Ian, like my old habit was stay back. So I found that nice happy medium. And I think that's the case for a lot of hitters. Like if there's a guy who goes way forward, like stay back, that's a great feel.
Yeah.
Stay back is a great feel. And I was the guy who stayed back, so going forward was a great feel. And I've learned that now is like that's what I was really feeling, was I just needed the opposite to find the medium.
I think that's great right there. Talking about opposites, because I mean that's what it takes, is that extreme. So many times when we're struggling, or when anyone's struggling, they try to make a little adjustment. in reality, it's a big problem. So if it's a big problem, you're not going to fix a big problem with a little adjustment. Like you're going to have to fix a big problem with a big adjustment. As weird as it might feel, and these feels we're talking about, is they might feel like, like you said, teacher man, he's like stand on your back leg because it's an aggressive, extreme feel. But then you figure that out, and then maybe you're almost too far back, and then you hit that too extreme. So then you need a opposite until you can kind of find that. If you keep trying to make little adjustments, you're going to essentially get nowhere. But moving to a different kind of topic here. When let's say you're taking batting practice here, Ryan, what is a perfect to you? What does a perfect in batting practice look like for you?
I think it depends. For me, it depends a little bit. Like if there's a time where I feel like I can only do one thing or the other, then I feel like that round is not complete until I do the thing that I can't do.
Totally.
Yeah, so if I'm only slicing balls to the right side, like if I'm only slicing balls to right field, and I can't backspin a ball, I can't stay behind the ball, then backspinning a ball is perfect. And then as the rounds progress, obviously I get a little bit more aggressive. But like generally, a backspin fly ball, backspin line drive to center field, like hard hit, smothered fly ball with some backspin is a good one for me. But in general, and I think a lot of pro hitters feel this way, especially with all the information out there now. Some guys will set their BP up to the starter. So if it's like the the sinker slider guy or the low slot two seam guy, like a fly ball might be like a high flying ball that doesn't even get to the warning track might be a perfect one. Because you're grooving your swing, you're grooving your path for that clip. Or if it's the four seam velo guy with some spin or with some angle, some upshoot, and you want to smother the ball and you feel like a little topspin ain't the worst thing that day, then that's fine too, I think.
Yeah.
For me, I've done both. But generally, like if I can set up my swing, this is how I feel about my drill work as well as my on-field. If I can get into a spot that I know, like I have a couple cues that one of them is like being able to cover the fastball up. If I feel like I can cover the fastball up, it doesn't really matter how I hit the ball because I know I can feel if I'm doing it right, And when you get to that point in the season, that's a great spot to be because there's a lot of grind in getting to that point. But if you get to the point where you're like, man, if I just get to the spot and I don't care about the result in batting practice, it's so freeing. And that's where I aspire to be most of the time.
Yeah. So I have this saying, and I think it rings true because you don't have like a set perfect. It kind of depends on the day and what you need for the day. And I say hitting is like handwriting. To everybody else, it looks the same, but to you, it's different every day, right? So your swing is slightly different. So you got to tinker here and tinker there. And I think that's what people need to realize. It's what you need for that day. Your job is to calibrate yourself for that day. Just thinking, okay, this is what I normally do. I'm not doing this. Let me just do it harder. No, you might need a little something different that day, right? And also backspin in the baseball. It seems like nobody can pull a line drive with backspin anymore. It's like nobody can do it. So now I'm starting to see like when I'm locked in, I can pull a line drive with backspin. When I'm not, I can't do that. And I feel like it's the same for like problem of swings. Nobody can backspin the ball pull side. Has that kind of been your experience with with hitting? Get the backspin to the pull side when you're off at least?
Yeah, I think I'm a hitter that has always been able to my misses are almost always pulled, even if I'm late. Like I'll be late and I'll make up for it with a jump. Like I'll jump forward.
Yeah.
And then it'll appear to everyone else, like you just said, it'll appear to everyone else like I'm early. But I know I was late. It's a reaction.
Interesting.
So
it's a byproduct of something.
Yeah, 100%. It's exactly what it is. And it's like, a lot of the time for me, if I'm late or if I'm jumpy, I'll end up pulling the ball and I might even pop some out of the yard. But that's just, I'm a strong guy now. And I wasn't able to do that as a kid. So as a kid, it might have looked like, a duck hook down the line and your coach is yelling at you. But now it might look like a homer and so your coach is like, man, you hit that one. So you really know.
Yeah, that's not where your consistency lies. Yeah. I love that. That's process over results. That is super professional right there. We're clipping that. That's amazing. Because you stress the process more than the result. Because if you rely on the process, the result, you can't do it backwards, right? Like you got to put in the formula to get the result. You just can't get the result without the formula. That's beautifully stated, man.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
About to be on my freaking Instagram for that one, bro.
Because I think it's great because it's like so many hitters, they just seek for the result, but they don't understand the why.
Mhm.
And you know, it's getting to really understand the why that's happening that can take you to a different level where
Mhm.
everyone's just so worried about like, all right, like, and obviously the results matter. Don't get me wrong, but like overemphasizing a result instead of like why it happened is what can create just a mental headspace. And kind of diving into that, obviously we've talked a lot about physical, what you're thinking physically, and then even mental with what we're trying to do. But how have you been able to deal with this sport of failure mentally?
Good question. It's hard, like no doubt, it's hard. And I think personally, I hope a lot of other players also feel this way. This is how I felt my whole life. Is people always talking about baseball, like when they speak about baseball, a lot of people like to say, like you just said, it's a game of failure. And I think that's right, but there's a right way to fail and there's a wrong way to fail. I can only deal with, like, if I fail and I'm doing it right, I don't care. Like if I punch and I was on it and I executed my plan and he threw a great pitch or I just missed or whatever, like I'm good. It sucks, but that's part of the game. And that happens a lot, you know, especially as you climb the ladder. And you can deal with those. But more often than not, I think, especially young players, but this happens to players in the show as well, you get yourself out or you don't commit or you go up there and you make a mental mistake. And those are the ones that you can't live with. And so I hope more coaches feel that way and players feel that way. But I think that the majority of the time, if I fail the right way, I'm cool. I can go home. I can take, really, like, I hate to say it, but if you take 3 punches in a game and you nailed it, what else can you do? Like, that's part of
it. Exactly. Control
it really is.
Control. Yeah.
I really think, like, when you see a guy slam his bat and he's 2 for 4 on the night and he doesn't have a punch out and he punches out and they're up by 3 and he slams his bat, it's not because he's punched out. It's because he messed up. You know, it's because he didn't execute.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
beautiful.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Don't beat yourself. Like, we are our own worst enemies. If you didn't beat yourself, I think, you know, that was a win, because that's the toughest thing. Like, as hitters, we make it so easy for the pitchers. And what those guys don't realize is they can throw, you know, some dick middle fastballs and they're going to get missed. They're going to get fouled off. Like, hitting is still hard. It's because we are our own worst enemies. So, you know, accomplishing that plan is super important. So pivoting a little bit, we've talked about, you know, a lot of mechanics, some mental stuff. Let's talk about your playing experience between the lines. You went to UCLA, very fun school, played in the big leagues. Let's talk about your favorite moments in between the lines.
Favorite moments in between the lines. I'll say in high school I had one. We won our section. We were never, public school. We played against public schools. But we played against, actually, Dylan's high school, Carlson's high school.
Oh, okay.
Elk Grove. I don't know if you guys have heard of that high school, but it was like, and I still like remember it off the top of my head because of how pumped we all were, and we felt like an underdog. We were playing a team with 5 future big leaguers on it in high school, public high school.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It was Dylan, Nick Madrigal, Derek Hill, Rowdy Telez, and Dom Nunez. And
that's
and
a squad.
That's a squad.
That's a squad.
Yeah. It was a total squad. I've never seen a high school team like that, like as loaded as that. And you know, like real guys. Like it wasn't just like man, like real guys.
Yeah.
Up and down the line. Defenders, everything. And we beat them in our league. We won our league against them. And that was super meaningful because it's like, man, okay, yeah, like I was hyped up. You know, we were a super underdog compared to that team. We had one guy committed to play in college, no draft picks in the last however many years from my high school. So it was great. Yeah, I'll remember that one forever. And then in college we had we had a great season in 19. I have a lot of favorite moments. I have a funny one that sticks out because of just how weird it was. And one of them was so we're playing in a regional. We're hosting against LMU. We were the number 1 national seed in college, and we're playing against LMU, which we thought was like a favorable matchup for us. And LMU, we played them during the midweeks. We beat the hell out of them twice. but we never played them on the weekend. And on the weekend, for whatever reason, they were like a different team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we overlooked them a little bit, and they gave us a great game, and they beat us in the second game of that region. So we had to come all the way out the losers bracket and come back and play them again. Beat them the first time. We had to beat them twice. So the second time was day one of the draft at the same time as the game. And like I just said, we had 3 guys picked during day one of the draft during our game. One was right before the game, like 2 minutes before first pitch. The other one was in like the second inning, third inning, and then the other one was in like the 5th inning. And it was hilarious because the first guy drafted was Michael Tolia. He was my roommate. Actually, both these guys who I'm about to say were my roommates. And Tosia gets drafted, immediately goes to first base and lets the ball roll right through his legs. E3. And they're chanting like Rockies blew it and all this stuff.
Rockies blew it.
Yeah, hilarious. Like just got drafted, best day of his life, and he just makes like a brutal error. And in the biggest game of our life. And then 2 days later, one of our arms gets drafted. He wasn't throwing, thank God. So that was cool. We were all hyping him up. But we didn't really know if we were supposed to celebrate or not because we're playing a game, right?
Yeah.
And a couple innings later, our second baseman, Chase Trump, gets drafted by the Cubs. 2 seconds later, he hits a massive homer, like go-ahead homer to the left. And we were like super hyped. He goes out to second base, ball rolls right through his legs, E4. And we're like, what is going on? So I don't know why that sticks out to me. And then they start chanting like Cubs blew it,
Yeah, Cubs blew it.
That was
hilarious.
Yeah, that was, and I was just thankful. Like I didn't get drafted. I'm not gonna make an error. I'm good. Like
That's crazy.
We're good. So that was funny.
What are some of the most brutal chirps you've received in your career? Because these fans are ruthless, man.
Yeah, they're ruthless. I haven't gotten that many bad ones. I have a pretty thick skin, and I laugh at most of them.
Yeah.
Not because I'm like, oh, shake it off. It's just because like I think they're funny. I think people are creative.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you. Like they're just like you stink or whatever. Like nothing too personal. They'll talk about your girlfriend.
The classics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk Ryan a little bit on your call up to the big leagues. Like, what was that experience like?
It was awesome. It was great because for a couple reasons. Last year I battled some injuries. I broke my hand early on in the season on a hit by pitch, and then rehabbed it. Kind of had a setback in the rehab. Came back. I was just getting out of my assignment, and then I pulled my groin. And so I went down for basically like 12 weeks. I don't know how long it was, like 10 or 12 weeks total. It was a long time. And I came back and had a brutal month in AAA. And the whole time people were kind of telling me, the Tigers we weren't having a great season. And there was some opportunity there, I think. And, I had my hopes up at the start of the season. So I kind of just, got beat up. And, we played like a month, and then September 1st or August 31st is coming up. And they do September call-ups where they expand the rosters. And we kind of know – it was my first experience being in AAA for that because the year prior they didn't do it. They only did, I think, one spot. I can't remember what it was. It was a weird deal. But this year I figured, like, man, there's going to be at least 2 guys from our team moved up, if not a couple more moves. Like, it's going to be a cool day. And so we play a game in Rochester. I go 0 for 5 with 2 punchies. And day game, it was like 11 a.m. or something. And we come in the clubhouse, and our manager calls a meeting. And in pro ball, like, managers don't call meetings. Like, I've never seen that before. So I was like a little nervous, but I didn't know what to think. Manager calls a meeting. He goes, I want to let you know that 2 of our own guys are going to the show. And he goes, hitting coach Adam Melhuse and infield coach Alfredo Almeziga. We're all like, what the hell? And we're all domed up. We're like, this guy's crazy. All right. I mean, that's awesome. Clapped it up.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And then he let us loose. And so we're all kind of looking around. We didn't know if anybody was going up, if they were going to trade, like what. But we all knew there was something. Had to be something.
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes later, Torque was down. He had gotten optioned at the All-Star break. He gets called in. So we're like, man, Torque's going up. That's great. And I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden I get tapped, and they call me into the office, The guy who tapped me is our bench coach, Tony Capasilli. He's like one of my all-time favorite coaches that I've ever had. That whole staff, really. And I get called into the office, and everybody's in there. Manager, hitting coach, who was my hitting coach in AA when I really turned it around. He got promoted, and he actually went to the big leagues with me. And my infield coach, and there was one other guy in there. Everybody, whole staff. And Lloyd McClendon was our manager. He's the guy. He used to pick up bases.
Yep, he's the third base. Picked up third base.
He picked up bases. Yeah. He managed in Pittsburgh and a couple other places, but he called me in, and he's not an emotional guy whatsoever. And he called me in, and he kind of had this weird look on his face. And he was like, Ryan, he said some really like personal words to me about my injury and like battling back, and he told me for doing that. And I didn't know that we had that kind of relationship, but after the fact, I realized that me and Lloyd were actually close in the long run, and I still text him, to this day.
That's awesome.
And he goes, and then he said, and you're going to the big leagues. I'm so proud of you going to the big leagues. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I started crying. He started crying. Nobody recorded it, which I wouldn't trade it for the world because I have that memory forever. Yeah, it's up there. I'll never forget it. So It was amazing. And then it was just a shitstorm of like, hey, you got to get on a plane at 4 a.m. tomorrow, and you got to go to Detroit and call your parents, call your brother, call everybody.
That's got to be the best call right there to the parents.
Oh.
FaceTime, and I think my dad was a sports writer. He kind of knows the deal as far as like what important dates are around the calendar year. So he had an inkling as to like this might happen, but you never know. And so I called him, and luckily they're both just chilling, and my parents were both there. Got to talk to them and tell them. Called my brother and his girlfriend. They were working, but they were on like a work call, and they put it down.
They knew.
They picked up. Yeah, it was dope.
That's awesome.
Called everybody I could and packed up my shit. And then, but we really slowed down, and we kind of chilled in the manager's office. Because by this point, after I talked on the phone, everyone had kind of left, besides the staff who were just hanging out. It was one of those staffs that like just likes to hang out and just chop it up and talk and, shoot shit and whatever else. And so the guys were hanging. Torque was super relieved. He'd had a tough start. And then he really turned it around to AAA. And we became really close because we were both grinding. And we had been teammates in AA all year. Me, him, and Riley got called up to AAA. And then Riley had broken his foot at the start of the year. So it was like a whole thing. And me and Torque were just both really relieved. And like, we just sat there and like chilled and had a beer with the boys. And we just chilled with our manager, coaching staff. We're hanging in the office. And we're talking about life, just old stories. Nobody's on their phone in the moment. I'll never forget that day. It was amazing. And then go to the hotel, fly to Detroit. Didn't play the next day. And then I made my debut against Kansas City on the 2nd. So it was awesome.
That's sick.
How was it like that day? How was it that day? Like the experience of, what relief, what were you feeling then?
On the day of my debut, or the day?
The day of your debut, the day of the debut, like when you got to be in the field and kind of take it all in.
Yeah, it was the day before. So like I said, we had to get up on a plane super early on the 1st. Yep. And fly to Detroit. There was a noon game or 1 o'clock game, getaway day, playing Seattle, and I didn't play. AJ texted me and he said, "Yeah, you're not gonna play. You're gonna play Friday night." And I said, cool. But then they started warming up Matthew Boyd, he's on our team now. And he was pitching for Seattle, and he was a lefty. We didn't have any righty bench bats that day for whatever reason. He goes, hey, you might have to come pinch hit for Boyd, or when Boyd comes in. And I was like, oh my God. Not only have I never pinch hit before, like really, I didn't expect to play. Like, I don't even know if my parents are there. I think they are. But luckily I didn't have to go in the game. The next day, so that day I was like gassed because it was so early, and I slept like a baby. I've never slept so good in my life.
Crazy.
I'm so thankful for it. And the next day I woke up like super rested, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be fine. But I couldn't really eat. I was so nervous. But then I showed up to the field, and you're nervous. You got to do like the interviews and stuff. And but that all passed. And then by the time the game rolled around, it's just routine, right? Like you know what time to go out. I went out like I think 3 minutes early. I made a point that day to go out on the field at like noon just to check it out, so I wasn't overwhelmed when I came back out at 7. Which I recommend that to anyone else having that experience. Like, take your time early so that it doesn't speed up later. And then Melendez hit me a pop-up on the first pitch of the game, and I caught it. So then I was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, settled in.
That works good. That's an easy one. It wasn't a 106 short hop, you know. It was.
I think the second inning, Dozer hit me a bullet, or like they had a couple of righties that would like to topspin. I was playing third, and Hobby was playing short. I mean, I grew up watching Hobby, so that was cool also. There's just a lot of guys on that team that I walked up for my first at bat, and it was, can't remember who the umpire was. Might have been Laz Diaz. I can't remember, but he was very nice to me. And the catcher was Salvador Perez, and he said he didn't really realize it at first, but I took my time to get up there to listen to the announcement and everything.
Yep.
And he goes, "Hey, congratulations!" And he kind of stepped in front of home plate and took his time. So I got a second to like breathe in, and then I ambushed and I lined out. I was trying to go deep, and I lined out. Yeah.
Hey, a barrel's not bad though. A barrel is not bad. It could be much worse. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it. Miggy had offered me a Rolex if I went deep on my first pitch, because that's what he did for that. I said, hey, you bought Akil a Rolex when he went yard on his first pitch, because on opening day in 2021, Akil went backside on his first pitch.
Yeah.
And he pointed to his wrist coming around third base. Like, hey, I want a Rolex. And I said, all right. Like, what about me? And he goes, all right, at first I ambushed, and I came around. I was like, man, I almost had a Rolex in my pocket.
But, Rolex and Miggy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Incredible, man. All right, so we could probably talk all day if we really wanted to, Ryan. We're going to try to wrap it up for everyone else at home. Cenk, we always end with one question, and I think you're going to have a great answer for this one. Take it away, Cenk.
So knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell your high school self?
Good question. I think, I've had a couple experiences where just in baseball, but also in life, I think for me personally, there are times when you feel like you're in a rut, whether it's you're slumping or you're having injury, bad luck, or whatever in your life, relationships, whatever else, and you feel like you're almost out of it. But usually there's something where you're like, man, this is rock bottom. And don't be afraid to get to rock bottom. You know what I mean? Because I think getting to that point where you really have your back against the wall and you have to figure things out, for me, I've had a few of those times, but one of them was in college when I was a college player hitting 220 and I made 20 errors at third base. I didn't have a future in pro ball if I didn't turn it around. And that was the reality. And then there were a couple of other times in pro ball. And then, like I said, when I made my swing change, it's like, man, this isn't going to work. I got to figure something out. So not being afraid to get to the point in your life where you hit a rock bottom, you know, and you really have your back against the wall and you have nothing to lose. Because I really think when you're watching great players, I know a lot of baseball players are going to listen to this. If you're watching a great player on TV, there's no doubt that they have had their back against the wall many times. Yeah, I don't care who it is, whether it's the Latin player who grew up in a neighborhood that didn't have the resources that you guys or I maybe had growing up, or it's the American-born player who, for whatever reason, you know, they went from a JUCO and they went undrafted and they had to transfer and they had to go to the D2 and then they had to go to the D1, or maybe they didn't go to the D1, they went undrafted. They had to sign as a free agent. Like, they've had their back against the wall. And not being afraid to get to that point, I think, is crucial.
Yeah, that's really what builds you as a player right there. That's like what sets your foundation. Kind of like, I think if you don't have those moments, one, you're not working hard enough. And two, like, what do you really have? Like, you don't know the grind and what it's willing to take to like pick yourself up off the ground. It's really hard to do because everything is against you. You have no confidence. It's super easy to quit. It's much easier to quit than it is to keep going. But right when it feels like it's the worst and it's its hardest, that's when you come out on the other side. You're like, whoa, that was nice.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more.
That's awesome.
Sweet.
Ryan, thank you so much for stopping in, man. This was an awesome talk with you, man.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone, for listening. This is StickTalk Podcast. We will catch you again.